Welcome back to the Seedy AF podcast. I'm Jocelyn.
And I'm the Omega. We're happy to have you with us for another episode where we can peel back the curtain on what it's like being a married couple that creates adult games for living together. Now let's get seedy.
In today's episode, we're going to tackle the question that we literally get asked all the time. What's it like to work with your spouse all day? We know for a fact, because many of you have asked, that you are incredibly curious about how we navigate being both business partners and life partners.
There's a lot of fun that comes with being business partners and life partners at the same time together, but it can be challenging at times too. And I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions or specific topics you want us to talk about in future episodes, please send them in. We want to hear from you.
So it may come as a surprise to some of our longtime fans and players that we are a married couple because it's not something that we widely publicize. It's also not something that we consider to be a secret. And if somebody asks us about it directly, we always answer them honestly. But I think, at least for me, what has held me back from making it something that we are kind of proactively public about in the past is that I don't want it to be seen as a gimmick or something that takes away from the fact that we are a legitimate business and a legitimate game studio. When it comes to the business, we are business partners first. I think that we make a great team as business partners. And so I don't want the fact that we also happen to be a married couple to overshadow the fact that I also just think that we run a great business together. But as we get further along in this process, I know that players and fans are curious. And so I think it's time for us to just open up and satiate that curiosity that you have about what it's really like for us to be a married couple that makes adult games together. Like I said, we get asked literally all the time what it's like to be a married couple that works together all day. Even when we don't tell people about what the nature of our business is, we will tell anybody that asks, even in real life, that we run a business together. And in my experience, the reaction is either one of two reactions. Either it's, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. That's so great. How lucky are you? Or it's like this look of horror, like, what? Really? Like, how does that go? And I literally have even had a friend pull me aside and be like, how's it going? Are you okay? So it tells me a lot about what that person's either own relationship is like or what their perception of marriage is like. The reality is that for us, we genuinely like each other. That's why we're married. We make a great team in our personal lives as well. So that carries over to running a business together. And I can't imagine being married to somebody that I wouldn't want to spend all day with. So for us, it's a privilege to be able to work together and spend all day together. And I do have a few other friends who responded very positively to learning that we're a married couple that works together. And no big surprise, they also have great relationships with their spouses and either full-on businesses or side hustles that they run with their spouse. But that's always been interesting to me. It's very telling, the people that think that it must be a bad thing, don't you get tired of them? Don't you want a break from them? And it's why would I be with somebody that I couldn't be around all the time? That, to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
For more context too, how much I like Jocelyn and love her. I give her what she calls googly eyes, and I look at her from across the couch, and then she gives me a salty face. She's like, "Why are you looking at me like that? Stop it!"
Yeah.
To give you even more perspective, during the pandemic, I was working as a professional web developer, and it was 12-hour shifts. You had to be on site, and then there were people who were taking overtime just to get away from their wives or their spouses and their kids. And I just couldn't for the life of me understand, why would you want to get away from somebody like that? And the only realization that came to mind is they just obviously disliked them so much. And I just couldn't imagine staying with somebody that you don't love like that. When it comes down to it, when you're married, and especially as business partners together, there has to be a high level of trust, communication, and a lot of compromise that comes with it. The stakes are really high when you're a spouse working together on a business too, because you can't destroy a business relationship because that means you're going to destroy your marriage as well. So you have to handle things tactfully sometimes. And like I said, there's a ton of compromising that goes with it to keep things healthy and to move along and to pursue the same kind of path together to make your business successful, but also to keep your marriage successful as well.
Yeah, I think for us, that in our personal life, we already have a high level of trust and really good communication, and we are very used to honoring the other person's opinion and finding places to compromise. And I think that obviously that bodes well for our business relationship, that we can bring those skills to our business relationship. But I also think that a lesson that we've learned is that it can also be a downside because we do trust each other so much. Sometimes I think that we can kind of become like a hive mind, or we become more concerned with, like wanting to compromise with the person rather than stick up for our own instincts. And one of the early examples of this is when we were designing the characters for our 3D game. And so I was customizing these characters and spending a lot of time on that, because once you've set the character, then that's what the character is going to look like. It would be incredibly hard to change it later. So I would bring the Omega over and I would say, what do you think of this character? And his answer was always more booba.
You always need more booba.
Yeah, not surprisingly. And, I think in hindsight, if I had been paying attention to my own internal voice and my instincts better, I probably would have insisted on having a wider variety of body types. But because I trust the Omega so much and I trust his opinion and I trust his taste level, I trust his knowledge of this industry, I just was like, great, more booba. And there's no regret or resentment there. It's more just like, okay, this is a lesson learned for me that as much as I trust him and I want to honor his opinion, that I also need to continue to trust myself and listen to my own internal voice. And, when there's a disagreement there, to be willing to push back on that a little bit, knowing that, we've disagreed on things in the past and been able to come to a compromise. So, I shouldn't be afraid to kind of push back if I think that maybe we should reevaluate something.
And working together as business partners, we're in the same house. We both have our own rooms that we use as an office, but that still means that we do end up collaborating together frequently, calling each other over to our workstations. And some examples of that would be like working in DAZ, which is our 3D posing and rendering software that we use for our characters for the 3D game A Shot in the Dark. Some of the stuff that we've done is like pick out the MC's donger,
That's what we lovingly call his genitalia.
Yep, and then like picking out like how many veins should be on the shaft,
and the texture of the scrotum.
Yep, the texture, how squished like the scrotum should be together, and all that kind of stuff. Another example is like the boob slider, like Jocelyn was talking about. Before I would be like, oh, nope, it needs to be a bigger booba. More booba is good, more booba, more money. And then another fun thing that I really enjoyed, especially coming from a programming and coding background, is earlier on in the business, Jocelyn would have questions for me. She was like, oh, can we make this style look different here for Ren'Py games, which is an engine that we make these games together in. And then eventually she was like, I just got tired of asking you, move this button over here, change that color this way. And she wanted to get into the code itself. And for me, I was like, oh, hell yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I think me coding gave you a little bit of a chub, let's be honest. A little bit of a business chub.
Yeah, a little bit of business chub for sure. And then, she had her first push with code, went up to GitHub, and I was so excited. And, I was like, yes, now I have my wife as a developer with me.
That's been your goal for a long time, is to get me coding. And I think it's funny because I know in some of your previous jobs that you always dreaded the inevitable announcement that they were going to start pair programming, where you would have to be programming side by side with another person. And yet that's something that we do all the time. I'm constantly looking over your shoulder while you code, because that's how I learn and also how I catch some of your mistakes.
Yeah, whenever they mentioned pair programming in previous jobs, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm leaving. Like, I'll see you later.
So one more challenge that we wanted to address that I'm sure people will not be surprised to hear is that, when you're working in the same home, which happens for couples that happen to both be working from home, but working at different jobs, obviously you see quite a bit of each other. And, working from home, even if you're single, you can have trouble separating your work and personal life. For us, it's, compounded by the fact that, yes, we both work from home. We both work from home in the same home. We both work from home in the same home on the same business. And then on top of it, it's our own business. So there's no set schedule. There's no boss. There's nobody telling us to either start working or stop working. I know for some people that lack of accountability would probably maybe make it hard for them to get work done or would lead to procrastination. But I think that we both have such strong work ethics that our inclination is to work more than we need to. And so, we have to be really intentional about creating a separation between our work life and our personal life, which I admit we're probably not the best at. We spend a lot of time talking about the games, outside of like what we kind of consider our work hours. Like, it just comes up all the time naturally. And we enjoy talking about it, hence the desire to start a podcast. Like this is basically what we sit around and do all day, every day is just talk business. And so, in that sense, the fact that we spend a lot of our time working and talking about business, I don't find that it's like a negative for us. And I think, or I hope that we are pretty intentional about when we do feel like we're getting stressed or we need a break, that we're good at letting the other person know, like, I just don't want to talk about this right now. And we also push the other person too, if we see them working late into the evening, hey, take a break. Like, let's do something different together, watch a show or whatever, just to kind of press them into having a little bit more of a boundary. But the reality is, I think that with our work ethics, there's just no hope of us ever having a complete separation.
Yep.
Yep. But I think, to wrap it all up, I would say that, as long as you like your spouse, then working with them all day is usually a good thing. I think it's brought us closer together, both as, obviously as business partners, but also as life partners. We continue to practice the same skills that we need in our personal life, in our business life. And so they just, it's a feedback loop that just both continue to improve the other. And so I think that about wraps up our discussion on what we wanted to say. We hope you enjoyed hearing our stories and our insights into all the joys and challenges of being married game developers. If there's anything that we didn't answer, or if you have any other questions about us or our business or the adult game industry in general, we want to hear from you. So please reach out to us via email, on Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever platform you're listening to this on. I'll make sure to include links in the description so that you can get in touch with us.
We hope we planted some seeds with you. See you next time.
Bye.